A warm welcome to this UniPID and INASP joint webinar on equitable practices in research co-authorship across continents. My name is Kaisa Kurki and I'm UniPID's director. Let me start this webinar by sharing a couple of words on the background of this event. So the webinar is co-organized between UniPID and INASP, and the collaboration between UniPID and INASP was initiated during a workshop hosted by the Institute of Development Studies, IDS, and Southern Voice, a network of think tanks from the Global South. And the workshop took place in Brighton in March this year. The workshop marked an end to a joint IDS and Southern Voice project on promoting equity in research. And this project identified different approaches to addressing global imbalances in Global South and Global North partnerships. Whereas the Global North actors have focused on equitable partnerships and guidelines, Southern actors have expressed more concern about systemic aspects. For instance, low recognition of Global South originated research and Global South actors' limited role in agenda setting. This project also identifies spaces of change for strengthening the agency of Southern actors. And one of these spaces was publication and dissemination. And thus we at UniPID, we wanted to explore this space further and reached out to INASP, International Network for Advancing Science and Policy, that has been advocating for access to evidence and research publishing reform, and also hosts a platform of the Rising Scholars community of 14,000 researchers in the Global South. So this webinar will be discussing the global research publishing landscape and explore alternatives to avoid reproducing global inequalities in research co-authorship across different contexts. This webinar also marks UniPID's annual seminar 2025 and complements UniPID's contributions related to national work on research integrity in Finland and UniPID's guidelines for responsible academic partnerships with the Global South, published in 2023 by addressing one area in need of systemic change. Before we dig deeper into today's exciting topic of equity in research publishing, let me shortly introduce you to the two organizations behind the webinar. So shortly about UniPID, the Finnish University Partnership for International Development. We are a network of 10 Finnish universities seeking to advance universities' global responsibility and bringing global South perspectives into the 3 pillars of higher education. And this is also where we bring in our services in education through virtual studies, in research through various projects, and also the research integrity perspectives and the societal impact, bringing the researchers' voice to the policymakers and facilitating dialogue between these sectors. INASP is an international development organization with over 30 years experience working with networks of partners across the Global South. And INASP works with educators and researchers to create rigorous knowledge and to drive powerful learning for youth. They assist universities to create the knowledge pipeline for the future, one that is built on local talent, deep expertise, and that's attuned to the needs of the countries and communities. INASP is a catalyst for impact in Southern knowledge systems. INASP uses its expertise and experience so that Global South educators and researchers and the institutions they lead and serve can thrive. INASP delivers impact in 3 core areas: youth. Youth can secure meaningful and dignified work, critical knowledge for policy, practice, and communities, women educators and researchers leading change. Now, a couple of words about housekeeping of this event. So this webinar is being recorded, and after the panel discussion, we have allocated some time for a Q&A session. So we invite you to share your comments and questions in the Q&A section. which will be open throughout the whole event. You're also welcome to engage in a lively and respectful discussion with other attendees. And for this, you can utilize the chat to share your thoughts and respond to others' comments as well. So this is the program we have prepared for you today. We will first hear a keynote on research equity and publishing by Dr. Haseeb Irfanullah from INASP. And then we will have a roundtable discussion of an hour with 4 panelists. And after that, as mentioned, we'll have a Q&A session of 15 minutes. And finally, our closing words will be presented by UniPID Board member Roseanna Avento, Global Development Manager at the University of Eastern Finland. Let me now introduce you to our keynote of today, keynote on research equity and publishing. Our keynote speaker today is Dr. Haseeb Irfanullah. He's a biologist turned development facilitator who often introduces himself as a research enthusiast, an associate at INASP, co-chair of Environment and Sustainability Committee at OASE. He's also an associate editor of Learned Publishing and a chef of the Scholarly Kitchen. He advocates for justice, sustainability, climate action, and resilience of scholarly publishing. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Haseeb. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kaisa. Let me share the screen. And see my full screen. Can you? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction. Hi, everybody. I hope you are having a good day today. As Kaisa rightly said that we will be first in the keynote, I will be trying to explore the question of equity. Especially how we can explore the North-South divide in the scholarly publishing ecosystem. Sometimes we may say that there is a North-South divide when we talk about the scholarly publishing ecosystem. And when outlining or talking about the background of this particular webinar, how it came about, she mentioned that as well. But what I would like to do now, I would like to share with you a few examples how this global North and South divide is still playing its role in this world. Let me start with research output. We know that it is quite skewed towards the global North, because global North has been leading for the last 350 years or so. But you can see that the red line is catching up. And the red line is catching up the blue line, which is the high-income country line. It is because of, obviously, China, which became the most, productive country in terms of research publication back in 2022, if I remember correctly. But still, many countries, they are producing not less. Just let us take an example of Africa. Just a couple of months back at INASP, we conducted a study on African scholarly publishing, the whole landscape. And I will be sharing some of the findings. But there it is mentioned, not from this particular study, but it is mentioned that although Africa, the continent, it is the home of 17% of the world's population. But when we think of the research output, it is only 2% of global research output. So we can see that in terms of research output, there is a North-South divide. Often we talk about journals by discipline, and we analyze the data of around 1,200 publishers and their journals. And we found that in Africa, 60% of those journals are either on, say, social science, arts, and humanities. So STEM is quite less, which might be quite different in global north. So we can see that there is a difference in terms of the journals. Those are being published from different continents or from the global south. If we think of the publishers' diversity, because we know that it is not only the commercial publishers, but there are learned societies, there are universities, and of course, information on publishers sometimes can be quite difficult to find or difficult to group in. In this particular publication, a study, not ours, Taskin and his co-worker actually did that. If you look into in the middle, the African as well as Latin American, you can see that the green bits and light blue, they are quite big. It shows that the learned societies and the university publishers are actually leading there, but commercial publishers are not quite strong there, and the middle blue bits. And in Africa, from our study, we found that 71% of the journals are published by academic institutions or scholarly societies. So this is a very strong number, definitely, more than 2/3 of all the journals that we have studied. If we think of indexing, which is quite important because we go for index journals because that shows that how, what do you call it, how rigorous or how quality, it is a kind of an indication of the quality of the journals because it is indexed by certain indexing agencies. If we take the example of Scopus and Web of Science, two leading indexing agencies, you can see that from one of the studies, the journals which are published from Europe, Oceania, and North America, they are more likely to get into Scopus and Web of Science. And the study also said that sub-Saharan African journals are least represented in these two indices. And if we compare sub-Saharan African journals and European journals, sub-Saharan African journals are 40 times less likely to be indexed if we compare them with European journal. So we can see that disparity exists in this area. Yes, quite a few negative things probably I'm talking about, but there is a very interesting aspect of that as well. Participants, you are very much aware of the, the momentum we have been going through actually, it hasn't ended yet, that open access. We are talking about open access journal, we are talking about open research, we are talking about open science even. And interestingly, we all know, we all are aware of it, that especially if you are listening from a global southern country like I am, I'm based in Dhaka, Bangladesh, that high APCs can be really, really a barrier, big barrier to publish in an open access journal or in a hybrid journal, because you obviously want your article to be read by everybody. But the payment, article processing charges, as we call it, APCs, it can be really, really tough to get. But when you need to pay, it is a kind of a golden open access journal. But there is another version, is called Diamond Open Access. And the Diamond Open Access, it is open access, but nobody is paying. By nobody, I mean the authors are not paying, the readers are not paying. So it is available to everybody. And interestingly, those Diamond Open Access journals are mostly Southern journals. So you can see that Global South, they are leading to some cases. And if you go to, say, Latin America, 90% of the journals are Diamond Open Access journal. It means APCs, payment is not an issue to publish there. Amazing. And in our study, we found that we actually analyzed all the African journals. Those are listed in DOAJ, Directory of Open Access Journals. And we found that those journals who are asking for article processing charges, the median APC is only $250. I know this is still quite a bit for some individuals, but interestingly, African journals are charging quite less, because if we go through all the journals of UAJ, you will be seeing that the average APC is $1,000. So you can compare 1,000 and 250. And if we look into the global average of APC, it is around 1,600. Some say it's 2,000, but which is 7 times more than the article processing charges charged by, on average, African journals. So we are charging less. Of course, there are many reasons for that, because I will be talking about it, that voluntary workforce are actually contributing to that, and technological investment might not be that high compared with the commercial publishers. So open access APC, we can see the global north, global south divide. Just earlier this year, there has been a study. Audience, you are very much familiar with the term predatory journals, vulture publishers. You know, there are quite bad names for those journals. But in a modest term, it is often called questionable journals. Questionable because they are not actually following the standard publishing practices. Interestingly, we may think that global north or developed countries, authors there, they might not publish in those journals. No, it is not true. They also get their papers published in questionable journals. But the problem is the global south, which has got low GDP, they publish more papers in questionable journals. And there might be various reasons for that. Very easily we get trapped, attracted, the pressure we face. So there is also, we can see global north, global south divide when we talk about who is publishing more in predatory journals. Now, let me share with you some of other points as well. For example, the studies showed, and we also know that technological investment, the global south invests less, and there are different article processing infrastructure. Not many global south actually could afford it, or talk about it, or even consider it for review process or manuscript processing steps. In terms of capacity, I would like to argue that when we might not see much difference between the editors and the reviewers, especially when we talk about how to contribute, and whether you are from global south or global north, because you have the knowledge of editing, you have the understanding as a reviewer, understanding of the subject. That's why you are getting invited to review. So I would like to call it comparable. But we may discuss it. It may be debatable that in terms of using technologies, yes, there might be some differences between North and South. However, it is my understanding, but you can write in the chat as well, audience, that in case of South, there is no formal mentoring and training. These are all informal. And in many cases, it is self-learning or talking with your peers, talking with your supervisor. So it is a kind of informal, kind of a very relaxed way of training, just a hands-on training you get. But in case of other countries, probably it is more organized. So capacity development is more organized in the global north and compared with the global south. As I was mentioning a couple of slides ago, that voluntarism is a strong part, or I would say strong characteristics of the global north publishing. I know for sure there are editorial board members, chief editors, managing editors who are actually working as volunteers. Reviewers are volunteers everywhere, only a handful of probably a few journals who actually pay their reviewers, both in the global north and in the global south. But in most cases, they're all volunteers. That's why I'm saying global north and global south, they are comparable when it comes to the issue of voluntarism in peer review system. Publishing costs, oh my goodness, it's a huge gap. There are studies which actually show that it's a kind of a ballpark figure that many of the journals in the global south, they can publish an issue by investing less than 10,000, maybe 5,000 to 10,000, one issue, maybe 20 odd articles. Just imagine the big APCs, we may need to be asked to pay in a very good journal. It could be, thousands. But with that, one issue of a southern journal could be published. The reason is very simple. The volunteerism is one issue. And in many cases, the learned societies, they publish it, the institution, they actually cover the cost. That's why there is no overhead. The office space is already provided by the institution. That's why the publishing cost is very, very low. Motivation, I would say, motivation is more or less similar in the global north and global south. Why we publish? Of course, we have our own way of thinking that we should be publishing an article for our career progression, getting a tenure, getting promoted, recruitment is there. And of course, universities, they are also very cautious about the articles their researchers and academics are publishing because it is directly linked with university ranking. Just think of world ranking. University ranking. My goodness, almost 70% of the scores will come from research. How you invest, how much good quality journal articles, or even the number, quantity matters. However, although we see the industrial leadership in the global north, we might not see that kind of leadership yet. Maybe sporadically these are there, but industrial leadership might not be present in the global south. We can't often say that this particular journal is leading or this particular publisher is leading, except one or two, but you can name quite a few for the global north. In terms of, it is a very interesting point to me that we are talking about research integrity, publishing integrity a lot. And ethical concerns are rising every day. But I would like to challenge you. Please feel free to add if you support or if you disagree in the chat. We need to understand the local context and local culture when we talk about integrity, we talk about the standards. Because individuals understanding, individual framing of a particular standard, the way they actually see the situation they are in, that actually matters. And sometimes not defined integrity might not be applicable. So this is a key point to me. I have given some links. I wrote about it, focusing on peer review, the way we define peer review system, the way we manage it, we maintain it. Sometimes it not be suitable in the global south. We can talk about it during the panel. But I have been following this north-south divide for some time now. And one of my concern is, although we are talking about it a lot, but are we seeing that the gap is getting reduced? That's a very interesting point to talk about, isn't it? And that's why I think we often talk about from the global north, let us reduce the gap. But if the global south is content, whatever they are doing, because they might have very confined, very small, very well-packed authorship and readership. So breaking that silo might not be needed. If I'm self-contained and self-sustained by business model, I can, from outside, it may seem like I have a siloed mentality. I don't have the world view. Maybe we need to understand why it is not there. And the other point I would like to touch upon is you all know that the scholarly publishing is evolving. The concept-wise, it is evolving. That's why we are seeing so many different discussions, especially integrity has become a huge thing. But sometimes we see that in the global south, these emerging issues, these evolving concepts might not receive enough attention. For example, in the global north, we are talking about how publishing industry can contribute to SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. We don't talk about it in the global south. In the global north, increasingly, we're talking about the carbon footprint of publishing industry. We don't talk about it in the global south. And over the last 5-6 years, I'm sure you all know about it, that diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. It has become a huge issue in the global north, but as well as mental health. But we are not talking about it much in the global south. But no presentation in a scholarly publishing now can be finished without talking about AI, isn't it? Just 2 years back, or 3 years actually, back in late 2022, we started talking about ChatGPT, and just imagine how things have been over the last 36 months or so. But interestingly, when we talk about AI, the study shows that whether it is AI innovations or the uptake rate of AI, artificial intelligence, the market share, and the policies, standards, laws, legal instruments, everything is quite kind of skewed towards northern countries, and in some cases, only a handful of countries. But in the global south, in general, we see that when it comes to the scholarly communication, our governance and our institution kind of show some certain level of weakness. It is not quite robust. It is quite inward-looking in many cases. In terms of AI awareness, maybe we are not putting enough effort to raise the awareness. Sometimes some institutions, they are actually showing indifferent attitude. Even a year back, maybe at the academic institutions, we are talking about it, but there is a reason for that. Because if your infrastructure is weak, if your funding is low, how can you invest? That's why AI detection might not be possible, because AI detection tools are very expensive, the good ones. I don't want to name any tool in particular, but the good one, not the free one, is quite expensive. Not many journals. Even academic institutions can afford it. That's why enforcement or penalizing AI misuse is also absent. But before I finish, I would like to shed some light on the other aspect. Although I have been talking about the North-South divide, but that division is getting blurred too. Why I'm saying that? Let me give you a couple of examples. Have you thought of how many of your friends or your colleagues or your acquaintance, they have gone from your home country, if it is South, went to North to do a study and research and vice versa. So Southern research working in the Northern institutions, working on Northern research topic or Southern research topic, when we talk about it, or when we talk about North-South institutional collaboration, working on Southern or Northern, so everything gets really, really blurred, isn't it? There is no divide. But there comes division when we think of, hey, if there is a collaboration North-South, who is actually leading? Is there any co-leadership or absolute leadership? That's very important. When a Southern country is, or Southern institution become part of a consortia, are we intellectually contributing to that consortia, or we are just providing the data? We are just collecting the data. We don't have any intellectual contribution to the whole process. Even who is paying the APCs? Because in many cases, Northern journals, Northern countries, they don't get a discount or any waiver. So often they start paying it. So these are the very crucial questions. So this is my first example of North-South divide getting blurred in research space. But if we come to the publishing ecosystem, indeed, I have talked about DEIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. Over the last 6 years or so, there is a big push, especially in the, not especially, only in the Northern publishers, that we have to do something about it. there are various ways of dealing with diversity, equity, inclusion and accessibility, gender, sexual orientation, age, sex, geography. Let me focus on geography because we are talking about geography today. That's why we see the push for bringing or reducing the geographical gaps or bringing in geographical balances in terms of the research topic or research area being published in a journal, the composition of authors who are on the editorial board member. It has to be international as well. Reviewer pool, it has to be international as well. So there are some policies in place. And interestingly, although we may criticize that many of the journals, they publish less number of regular issues, but more number of special issues. So there's a criticism for that, a special issue or a special, but these are kind of, what do you call it, launched in a different way. And it's a kind of a project. So in those projects on a particular topic, there is a provision or there is an opportunity for Southern editors becoming in the leadership position. Maybe they are not enough experienced or they might not be well known. So they might not become the chief editor of the same journal, but they can be the special issue editor of that particular journal's special issue. So these are all good, but I would like to challenge you again that although in the top box, I talked about APCs, there is a fantastic, what do you call it, policy. The policy goes like that. If you are from least developed country or lower middle income country, you will be getting APC discounted or even waived 100%. You don't need to pay. Very fantastic. It is fantastic for the Global South. It means that in a journal which is charging $12,000 to publish one paper, but if all the authors are from the Global South, they don't need to pay a single penny. But the catch is, there is a cost behind my paper. Although I haven't paid my APC, but somebody else is paying my APC because that APC is being distributed to the others who are actually paying the APC. Is it justice? I am getting benefited out of others. Others are shouldering the burden. So we are actually creating another layer of kind of inequity in the scholarly publishing. The other point is, even there is South-South divide. As I mentioned, our study on the African scholarly publishing landscape, during our study, we identified 43 African countries and territories. Would you believe that only 3 countries, Egypt, Nigeria, and South Africa, they house 63% of the African publishers. Just imagine how skewed that is. So it is not only North-South divide, we need to think of, there are some legacy issue, there are some political dynamics, there are some national rules and regulations we need to think of because divide is everywhere. So before I finish my presentation, indeed, the North-South divide actually defines the equitable persona of a scholarly publishing. I would like to call it an inequitable persona. So this division is no doubt is defining that. But how are we going to reduce this gap? And when I say how we are going to reduce that, who we are actually, we are individuals, researchers, academics, authors, editors, peer reviewers. But our host institution may have some role, don't they? It's not only individuals. What about the publishers and journals? What are they doing about it? What about the academic societies that we are member of, or the publishers society, where publishers are member of? What about our national governments? What about our funders who are funding our research? So who is going to reduce the gap and how? Let us explore it further during the panel discussion. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share some of my thoughts. Thank you very much. Kaisa?
Dr. Irfanullah, thank you so much for addressing such an important topic as it is the question of equity in the scholarly publishing. The figures you presented and the facts that you introduced in your keynote, I think they are very meaningful. And now we have an excellent opportunity to further discuss how to address these imbalances in research collaboration, as well as how to promote more equity in these co-written and other forms of academic partnership. With that said, it is my great honor to introduce our panel discussion on equitable practices in research co-authorship across continents. Our keynote, Dr. Haseeb Irfanullah, will be joining us in this part as well, and his bio has been already shared, and we are very much looking forward for your participation, Dr. Irfanullah. We also have on board Dr. Laura Himanen, who is an expert in responsible research assessment and an active participant in networks within the areas of research assessment and open science, both internationally and nationally. Dr. Himanen works at CSC, IT Center for Science in Finland, concentrating on the development of the National Research Information Hub, research.fi. We had also on board Dr. Annette David, who is unfortunately not able to join us today due to some connectivity issues, but I would still like to make mention of her amazing bio. Dr. Annette David is a biotechnologist and lecturer at the University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. Her work intersects research, teaching, and policy advice. She is an advocate for open research practices and science communicator. Dr. David leads initiatives promoting open research and capacity building for researchers across East Africa. We also have on board Dr. Karembe Ahimbisibwe, who is a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Jyväskylä, Finland, and a lecturer in the Department of Adult and Community Education at Makerere University in Uganda. His research focuses on citizenship, everyday resistance, participatory learning, grassroots associations and development, pandemic precarity, and NGOs. Last but not least, I'm delighted to introduce the director of UniPID, Kaisa Kurki, who will be serving as the moderator for this panel. With more than 20 years of experience in international academic partnerships and networks, Kaisa has been leading the UniPID network hosted by the University of Helsinki since 2023. Kaisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Anna, and a pleasure to have such a wonderful panel to discuss this exciting topic with us today. Let me start with a short warm-up question for the whole panel. And the warm-up question is, what excites you in research communication? Let us start with the insights of Karembe. Please, Karembe, what excites you in research communication?
Yeah, thank you so much, Kaisa, for having me, and Anna for the kind introduction. Very, very briefly, really what excites me, and it's a long experience, but I would talk about three things that excite me within the research communication and the entire research ecosystem. One is when I'm writing and I am building an argument for my manuscript, and I see this argument shaping up. It really makes me very excited. And of course, this I have learned it through the process. And the second one is what also excites me most is the ability and the many opportunities I have had to present my thoughts and my papers, and then they get critiqued at the international conferences. And then lastly, but definitely not the least, is when I wake up in the morning and I see a pop in my email that my research work has been cited by some other people. It really, really excites me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karembe. Exciting to hear these thoughts. How about Laura? What excites you in research communication?
Yes, well, first of all, thank you for having me, and good afternoon to everyone listening. I have a bit of a different point of view because I'm talking about from the point of view of research evaluation and evaluating researchers. So what excites me is a bit of a future thing. So I feel there is a possibility that there will be a future that will embrace diversity in research communication in terms of publication forums and languages, for example. And I suppose that what we were just hearing from Haseeb's keynote as well, that research evaluation is so focused on English language journal articles. So researchers at the moment aren't as free as they could be to choose their publication forum or the language based on their intended audience, where the research is most relevant. So I think that this kind of future where the choice could be based on this sort of the audience and the relevance, that would be very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, indeed. How about Haseeb? What excites you? We've heard you talk about the different aspects in the Global South divide and the blurred landscape of research publishing, but what excites you in this topic?
Yeah, sometimes, thank you. Whether it is excitement or not, I was just wondering that sometimes I feel like research communication, are we serving ourselves only? Just you think about the authors, the researchers, the readers, the editors, the peer reviewers. It seems like we are a very confined zone, isn't it? Our own world. But the excitement is probably we are not talking about it much, how our research is going beyond this confined world and translated into action. But when I think of it, because I work in the development sector as well, not only in the academia, so I have seen the transition between these two worlds, and that excites me, the translation of research through communication. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That takes us wonderfully from the researcher perspective, appreciating the scholarly dialogue and publishing, to the assessment side of things, and then finally into the practice, the impact of research in today's world. Well, then let's jump into the first question. In your experience, what kind of trends do you see in the current research collaborations, and how do these trends lead to tensions among international research collaborations? Laura, would you like to start this round?
Yeah, so going back to what I was talking about earlier, citations, they are very influential in research evaluations and therefore in researchers' careers and promotions and recruitment. So there is a tendency for research to sometimes aim for publications that receive a lot of citations, obviously, because it makes sense. So, and there is one known fact about this, is that international collaboration has a positive impact on the amount of citations. So I think one of the tensions is that sometimes nowadays the collaborations are not based on the need to collaborate or sort of the relevance of collaboration, but instead it is a sort of a structure that's created to bring about more citations. So I think that's one of the issues or the tensions.
Absolutely. How do you see this, Karembe, from the researcher point of view, from your experience in international research collaboration?
I think some of the trends, I don't know that they're even trends, but I come from the humanities, subsection of the academia, if I may use the word. And so there's this, the professor talked about the global South divide, sorry, the South-North divide and the South-South divide. But you see, there is also the disciplinary divide in academic research. And so one of the prominent features of this divide is that there is, compared to the natural and physical sciences, there is limited, and inadequate funding for the research collaborations within the humanities, and that kind of the few that are there, or the many that are there, are also very, very competitive, but also with very little, money compared again to the natural and the physical sciences. So I think that is one of the, trends that has persisted. But at the same time, there is also one of the trends, especially within the research system I have been in, research forum I have been in, is that there seems to still be some kind of tension between the voices in research, the voices from the global south, and then the voices from the global north, in terms of how do we report, with which lenses do we use, conceptual lenses to write about what we write about. You will realize that most of the empirical research from the global south tends to use predominantly theoretical lenses developed, from the global north and by scholars from the global north. And I think that remains a trend that is predominant, and it takes some time really to argue that you can have a strong, lens from the global south, and it is accepted within the wider scholarly work.
Thank you so much, Karembe. Very powerful words talking about the disciplinary divide and the voices in research, and also highlighting the case how we report and the lenses we use in research. How about Haseeb? What's your take on this?
I was just thinking from other ways. For example, definitely not only, as Laura mentioned, that it is not, of course, it is important that international collaboration, when different perspectives are coming in, the citation could be higher, no doubt about it. But definitely there is a kind of a downside as well. Sometimes we are getting challenged, Just it happened earlier this week that when we were presenting our research, a collaboration, which is between the European universities and Bangladeshi universities, then the audience challenged that, are you creating a space for Western ideas being getting penetrated in my country context? So sometimes they see it, but our argument was, our discussion was, why when you say they and we, of course you will be thinking who is getting invaded by the other. But the thing is not like that. It was a kind of a collaboratively designed project. It is not someone is just imposing us. So that decolonizing mentality and the idea, there are lots of fantastic ideas generated at the global forum when everybody came together. Why we are saying that it is someone else is actually pressuring us, pushing us to take something in. And maybe it was true 10, 20 years back, but there are lots of good examples where collaboration really happened. So I do see the tension, and definitely multidisciplinary, disciplinary, what you call it, research, multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary research can loosen up those tension. But I will talk about it later if I get that chance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Haseeb. Also a very important message about how the research is overall perceived if it's done in international collaboration, and who is trying to impact whom. Let us now go into discussing the global publishing industry and its impact on research assessment and career development in different settings. And this is something that also Haseeb already touched upon in his presentation. And let us start with Laura, whose expertise research assessment is. So how do you see this issue, Laura?
Well, I suppose mostly the publishing industry impact assessment by providing and also manipulating the indicators that are at the moment, I think, too powerful in researcher assessments. So if we take journal impact factors, for example, they were originally meant for libraries to assess if a journal is worth subscribing to, but nowadays they're used quite recklessly and, as a measure of a researcher's or article's quality. And the higher the journal impact factor, the more profitable it is for the publisher. So there is a motivation to also manipulate this indicator. Unfortunately, open access and high journal impact factors usually don't walk hand in hand. So publishing in high impact journals, if it's defined by its impact factor, requires quite a lot of resources. So this makes it impossible for researchers coming from less resourced institutions to take part in the competition where you are assessed based on your high impact outputs. There are also, as Karembe was talking about, very big differences between different disciplines. For social sciences, humanities, journal impact factors are almost always lower than for STEM fields. And this actually has to do with the differences in publishing cultures. It doesn't mean that social sciences and humanities are less good or less quality research. Yet it's too easy to rank researchers based on this one impact score without giving enough thought to its limitations. In addition, the so-called high impact journals are usually English language. So there's a clear bias against doing research in any other language, not to mention topics of research. So I'm coming from a small country like Finland, and usually it's the case that editors politely suggest that maybe not mention the country in the title or the abstract to seem more relevant for the wider audience. And there's also studies showing how research methods and theoretical frameworks that are more prevalent in the global north are preferred by reviewers and editors, just as what Karembe was talking about. And this owes a lot to the fact that most reviewers for the so-called high-impact journals are affiliated to universities in the global north. So I think that the very structure of assessment based on outputs is actually biased against half the world. Thank you.
Wow, very insightful, Laura. Haseeb, would you like to continue here, sharing your views?
Yeah, I would like to bring another perspective to that. It is not only the researchers, they are being ranked, their institutions are being ranked as well, isn't it? And the problem is, I would name it because the thing is there. Many of the southern universities, we can't actually compete and get into the world ranking of universities because you have to publish at least 1,000 papers. Otherwise, you can't actually get in. And the scoring point is, as I mentioned, it is 60 to 70% is research. How much money can you invest, Global South University? Interestingly, nowadays, to satisfy you, the Times Higher Education, they invented a new ranking system, which is impact ranking. Can't invest in research? No problem. We are reducing the research percentage only 25% because the whole ranking will be based on the SDG. And we, the Global South, are very much into SDG. So we can easily get into and get ranked, and we can sell it to attract our students. And their research, you don't need to put anything. From Scopus, they will be extracting the data. So the thing is, we are thinking that how my paper can be included unless until I use the, all the 100, 200, 300 words in my paper so that it is picked up and my university's ranking is getting up. So you can see the connection. I am publishing paper, keeping in mind it will be contributed to my, it has to be Scopus index so that my university ranking gets higher. This is all good. We all love ranking, but the negative thing is, I don't want to name any university, but I know for sure, those global southern universities back in 2018, the whole university published only 70 articles, 70, in 2018. Now, in 2024, they published 1,200 journal articles. How is it possible? You guess. It means system can be manipulated and they're getting ranked. So we need to not only talk about, I like the way Laura mentioned that there are so much different aspects. Yes, I will continue publishing articles in Scopus Index Journal, no doubt. But we need to be aware of that the system can be manipulated and we can't do anything about it. Because our universities are governed, but not scholarly publishing industry. Who is governing the scholarly publishing industry? Nobody. That's the, I'm using the beauty of a scholarly publishing industry. You can do so many things, still get away with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Haseeb, for taking us into the role of the institutions in this in the publishing industry and their overall role and lack of governance. Karembe, how about the individual researcher perspective on the impact of the industry on research assessment?
My views will only perhaps expound on what Laura and Haseeb have just said, but also be kind of drawn from my experience. First, as a lecturer in a resource-constrained country and resource-constrained university, but also as someone who has had an opportunity to be here in Europe for the last 5 years and therefore has gone through a lot of publication experience and so on and so forth. So the debates about promotions, about impact, almost all of them rotate around one critical theme that is more difficult, publications and where you publish. And so as a result, we are engaged, these days with WhatsApp forums and so on, we are engaged in endless debates about the high factor journals, the high, impact journals, the predatory journals, the real quality journals, and the ability of the faculty in Makerere University, for example, to access and publish in those high impact journals that are also indexed in Scopus and other things that Haseeb has said we have no control over it. And so if you are an inbred, scholar at Makerere University who has not had the opportunity, and these opportunities, like I said, are not so many, to think that you can publish on your own in a Sage or in a Taylor Francis or in a Wire, journal is almost impossible. So what do? You end up publishing in more local journals, and then there is all this argument about how your work is not cited and so on and so forth. And then the last one that I want to talk about is now the different ways, especially in talking to colleagues from the Global South universities, how different universities put different grading systems for promotion. For example, in Makerere, they don't mind whether your papers have been cited or whether you have which factor. As long as you have 5 papers or 6 papers or whatever, then you are promoted. Then others, I'm told, in some other countries, they consider has your paper been, cited. So if it has been cited by 2 people, then it gives you these points. If it has been cited by so many, so all those kinds of variations and the difficulty of accessing these platforms, publishing, becomes more of a big, big challenge. And unfortunately, again, the resource-constrained universities do not put in an effort, as I finish, do not put in an effort to help the faculty. For example, like here in Europe, I think most universities, especially in Finland, have subscribed to some of these universities. So when you are a staff, they don't ask for APCs because the APCs have already been covered by the university. So such kind of structural support is not. So it is like getting a toddler, throwing them into the ocean, and you have, as a toddler, you have to fight these whales, you have to fight the winds, and so on and so forth. So that's the kind of ecosystem that we operate in. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Karembe. I think the struggles that you highlight really take us to the last question in this panel, which is about how we can address these issues. How can partners bridge this prevailing north-south gap that is perpetuated by the global publishing industry? So what is it that we can do? And I think Haseeb, in his keynote, he already identified all these different roles that we take in our various positions and roles in the academia and also in the society. So what can we do? And maybe I'll let Haseeb start with the contemplating on the different solutions that we might have.
Yeah, it's of course, the things are so diverse, so challenging. And I can see in the Q&A, there is a question of the funders, whether funders' role is important. Of course, funders' role is important to reduce the gap because, money matters. if funders are saying that you have to make it open, you have to collaborate, this and that. But I would like to, recently I have been thinking that often we give emphasis on individuals too much. What about our host institutions? What is their role actually? Their role is only to give a space, managing the fund, helping us to conduct research. What about the quality? Why it should be the peer reviewers and the journal's responsibility to ensure that my research and research communication is following research integrity and publishing integrity? Have you heard of any role from the institutions? Institution is getting benefit of my paper, but not thinking enough of the integrity, especially publishing integrity. So my thinking is that we need to look into the institution's role in getting more proactive in these spaces. And my second point, then I will end, that sometimes we talk about, especially the societies who work in the areas of scholarly publishing. For example, even my organization, INASP, we talk about capacity building of young researchers. They need to know, they need to understand how to write article, how to respond, how to design branch proposal, how to have a successful proposal. But we probably do not work with our partners enough to change the inherent problem within the system. So it is a systematic problem, but we are only building our capacity, not looking into the other side. Probably we are waiting for a critical mass. How big the critical mass should be to make a change, So I think we have to talk about it more and more. Sorry, I say that I will be giving 2 points, but there's a third point. Sometimes I wonder that publishing industry is very reactive, not proactive. AI is dominating. Now we are thinking to create policy to tackle it. Paper mills, oh my God. Thousands of paper are being retracted. We have started doing something about it. It means we are so much into publishing papers, we always forget our system is collapsing. Then we take some measure. So my third point would be the responsibility of the publishers to be proactive, to have early warning system so that the challenges like the gap between North and South can be reduced. So the responsibility of host institution, the NGOs or international network like INASP and others, and of course, the publishers themselves. We all have 3 different roles to play. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Haseeb. Indeed, we should not focus too much on the individuals to make systemic changes, but we need these institutional actors on board. How about Laura? Would you like to share your views?
Well, first of all, I totally agree with Haseeb on this systemic change that needs to happen, and it cannot happen on the level of individuals. And it can be sort of placed on the shoulders of the individuals. I mean, researchers have a lot to carry as it is, so they don't need a bigger burden. But when we go down to assessment, usually it is the peer review that's the golden standard of assessment. And this is obviously done by researchers. Other researchers look at their peers' activities, outputs, and so on. And the way that they look at these outputs, I think there is room for change there as well. So I think that we need to recognize diversity better. We need to give credit for doing research that is meaningful also locally, not like, this wider North global view. Also, we need to give credit to publishing in local languages. On the systemic level, I think that the misuse of metrics and indicators should be abolished. And this is something that the system maintains, not the individuals. And then when it comes to reviewers and editors, there's a lot of room to educate on unconscious and sometimes also conscious biases. And finally, on the publisher level, I think that editorial boards and the pool of reviewers, that just should be more diverse and inclusive, so there would be understanding of different points of view and different thematic lenses when it comes to reviewing research. So I'm sorry, I'm basically putting the burden on the shoulders of the researchers, even though I said that they shouldn't be done. But I think that we need to keep in mind that it is the individuals who do the assessments when it comes to peer review. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and very true. So we are back to individuals that are still the institutions are made of individuals, and also all these different bodies in terms of editorial boards, etc. They all are composed of individuals who also carry their role. Right. So Karembe, your final words on
my final words. I'm going to, while there is focused on the institutions. Of course, what I am going to say is also related to institutions, but I think for me, if you ask me, and given my experience and what I have gone through, I will tell you three things: funding, funding, funding. Because it is this funding of research that helps people like me, and of course my professors here, my supervisors here, to meet and to work together so that they mentor me. But as they mentor me and many others, then they are also able, what I would also say here is that they are also able, at least the people I have worked with here, are also willing to listen to what I am saying, and they respect it. They challenge me to make it more academic, but they respect that what I'm saying is a reflection of my experience, of my professional career growth, and so on. So we need more funding. I don't know what role UniPID can play. Wherever you have a voice, make it. That if we have these kinds of funding, because they are the ones that will solve the challenge of APCs. I have, as an example, so far between 2019 and now, I have about 15 articles in these quote unquote high profile, high impact journals and book publishing houses in Europe here. If I had remained in Makerere, I am not anywhere sure that I would even be having like 5 papers. So it is funding, it is funding, it is funding. And then of course, once there is funding, then some of these power dynamics between North and South researchers can be negotiated at different levels, depending on the personalities involved and so on and so forth. But once you have these funding opportunities, then much of the problems that we are talking about, much of the challenge that we are talking about, systemic challenges, can be lessened to a very great extent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karembe. Thank you so much for raising the important issue of funding still. So I think we've been able to conclude that we need these systemic changes and the institutions play a major role. But then again, also the individuals, they have their role to play as well. But we can't look beyond funding. That is still kind of decisive in many aspects here, what we can achieve. But then I would also like to maybe mention, just as a last point in the role of moderation here, the partnership aspect and how we can be ethical as individuals, as institutions, also in our various roles in our partnerships, to make sure that all our partners have their voice heard, and they can share their individual intellectual contribution, not only in the way of gathering data. And then we also consider the diversity and linguistic and other aspects in the context of both partners in our research collaborations. I think we've now reached in the end of this panel discussion, but we'd be very excited to hear from the audience what kind of issues you would like to raise to our wonderful panel. We have at least one question here in the Q&A. So I think we'll take this live. So how do you see the role of project funders in tackling these questions? Are researchers and institutions bound to funding rules, or do they have a degree of freedom? So I think we touched upon this already slightly, but then who among the panelists would like to take this question?
I can quickly talk about it. Yes, funders, they have their own, what do you call it, expectation, motivation. Yeah, motivation is the right word. And sometimes we find it quite daunting to abide by their rules, but definitely they are also accountable, at least to their people, if the national government is funding. So, but there are scope, and not only, we shouldn't talk about the rule to be abided by, because this is a kind of a legal implication to that. But let us talk about whether they give us enough space to innovate, to contextualize, or change in the middle of the project, if it is a research project, because there is a political turmoil in my country, there is a natural disaster. And I'm sure that many of the researchers, research funders, they are quite aware of the reality, and they are very much cooperative, and often they talk about co-production of the whole project. So I think rule is not the issue or kind of a negative thing. The rule has got its own place, but the main thing is, yes, degree of freedom is there to design my project, contextualize a particular tool, and gather the knowledge so that when it is communicated, it could be useful and it will serve the purpose of my institution as an individual, as well as the donors' commitment towards their authority or to their nationals. Yeah. Karembe, would you like to touch upon as a researcher?
Yes. I mean, the topic of funders and their interests and whether they fund research that helps different contexts is huge, and I think it cannot be, decisively discussed within 1 minute or whatever. But suffices to say that much, as you have said, as Haseeb has said, much of that, almost all the donor-supported or global North supported funding for research is fixed, if I may say, and doesn't want to shift an inch. And usually it is based, as we always say, on the interests of the funder. I mean, the different contexts have different challenges, as Haseeb has said, but you'll find that maybe there is now a lot of money to go and fund the research about LGBTQ and so on and so forth, or maybe there is a study to go and study about maybe climate change or greening or whatever, and yet there could be some other less, topics of interest to the funders that are very, very critical for the development of the people in the global south. So the interests of the funders, definitely they play a big part, but much of the research that is done is usually tied to meeting specific objectives and specific aims. Although I know that some funders have some kind of leg room where you can always, you don't necessarily have to respond to the specific question. You can always have a way of working around the question to answer certain emerging issues within the research. Yes.
Laura, would you also like to share your views on this question?
Well, I suppose funding is one of the most influential ways to, make any change happen. So when it comes to, say, open science, if a funder says that you need to publish everything openly, then this happens, and this makes the amount of open access publications rise. So basically, funders have a very distinct role, and they are dominant in the research area, I think, but that also means that they have quite a lot of responsibility. So in terms of what are their interests, who does that interest serve? Is that sort of equal, globally thinking and so on? So I think that funders need to be kept on board, but also funders need to sort of realize their own responsible role in this area.
Thank you, Laura. Now we have a second question, basically continuing on the same path of funders' responsibility and role in publishing. And the question is from our UniPID Coordination Unit colleague Antti Autio about, for instance, Horizon Europe necessitating open access publishing from EU projects, but then resources not directed to the publishing fees. which can then be a challenge for researchers in the global south due to resource constraints. So any views on how to tackle such an issue? This is exactly the kind of rule from the funders for open access publishing, but then again, not allocating funds for this purpose. Any ideas that you would like to share how to tackle?
Very quickly, it can be tackled because I probably likely mentioned that there are provisions. If your country is a least developed country, lower middle income country, the APCs can be 100% waived. For example, Bangladesh, we are still in that particular band in terms of economic growth. So we don't need to, as long as all the authors are from the global south or least developed country or lower middle income country. So that provision is already there. Sometimes we are not aware of it. And we also know that many of the journals are moving towards open access. So there are, of course, there are journals which will not charge anything to anybody. There are subscribe to open, they have. I published. That's why I know. It is not because I'm from the global south. Anyone can publish because that's the model they have. So the point I'm trying to make, there are different avenues of payment system. The ultimate idea is I would like to publish so that people can read it. Of course, due to absence of any funding sources, at the end, we go for the subscription journal because we don't have any other choice. But we need to explore the other avenues. Otherwise, we will be losing our opportunity. But the other point I just quickly, if I may mention, due to the surge of so many surge of research, there is a number that every year 5 million research is published. I don't know where they found that number. It means every 6 seconds one is out. Probably it is not only journal article, but many other things is included. So for the last almost 1.5 hours, just imagine how many articles have been published. So how many reviewers, how many? So it is a huge system and there are lots of diversity. I would like to urge the listener to this webinar that let us explore those avenues because so many models are there. So we need to think of that. For example, the article I have been referring to again and again, it is open access, it is free of charge. You can, it is post-publication peer review system, not pre-publication peer review. So there are so many models. Let us explore it. Thank you.
Thank you, Haseeb. That's such a good message for all of us to think a little bit outside of the box and maybe explore other avenues for finding ways to publish open access, potentially without any fees at all, and still be relevant. Yes, please, Laura.
Just one sort of continuing what Haseeb was saying, but this would be a very good opportunity for the funder, in this sense, European Commission, to also acknowledge that it needs to be diamond open access. So basically, that is the solution here. You publish in diamond open access journals, and there are no APCs. No one pays for anything. But if it's not sort of stated in the rules that this is something that you need to do, then it's still like if you can afford the APCs, then you're going to go for those. So I think this would be a very good opportunity for the funders to have sort of their say in what kind of open access is allowed.
Karembe, would you like to have a word or shall we take?
Just to say that, it is great that I am learning about these diamond open access journals, and I am going to explore more about them because, like I said, back in Uganda from the university where I am, this question is a big question. Someone goes and publishes 2, 3, 4 articles and then submits them for promotion, and then at that point they tell you your journals are published in a predatory journal. It has no ISN, it has no this, rather ISSN, it has no this, it has no the other. I mean, I have taken 5 years to do these journals and rather these articles, and then now you are telling me that they are predatory. What do I do? Do I go and hang myself or what? So the issue of the band of open access journals, I think, is very important, and I'm going to explore. I think it would be very helpful for majority of us. And so thank you so much, Haseeb, for this information about the diamond open access journals. But I want to think that possibly they are not as highly regarded as the closed ones, which require APCs. But this is something I can find out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karembe, for highlighting how important this topic is for each and every researcher. I think we're now already at the time that we need to give the space for the closing words. And our UniPID board member, Roseanna Avento, Global Development Manager from the University of Eastern Finland, has kindly promised to say the final closing words for this event. So now I'd like to thank you, the panel. There's one raised hand, but I'm afraid we are running out of time for the Q&A. So maybe we'll take this question in the chat, if that's okay. So thank you so much, panel, and let's give the floor to Rosie. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So, wow, what a discussion. Dear colleagues and friends, as we wrap up today's discussion, I really want to thank all the speakers, the panelists and participants for the thoughtful and very inspiring discussion and contributions. I think this webinar has really shown us that equitability in authorship and publishing and bridging this north-south divide are not just idealistic goals. They are achievable if we act with intention. And we've explored the challenges and opportunities in creating equity in co-authorship across continents, regions, countries, academic institutions. But there are also, as Dr. Irfanullah said in his keynote, there are inequities in the South, and as such, there is a big South-South divide. But I would also add the same is in the North. And thus to quote Mala, 2018, is there's Norths in the South and there's Souths in the North. But the message that has been conveyed through this webinar is very clear. Equity is not just an ethical responsibility, it's a foundation for knowledge that serves all communities around the globe. So I hope we can leave here with a shared commitment for three actions. First, to champion transparency and equity in every academic collaboration and in every co-authored publication. And then second, to amplify voices that have been overlooked and that cannot be heard for any myriad of reasons, to continue to speak and work for decolonization of the publishing industry so that the industry recognizes and embraces diversity in language, fields, and themes of research. And this is also important at individual level and at institutional levels as well. So we should also continue to give feedback to funders so that they make their funding instruments equitable in every aspect as well. And then third, to turn today's ideas on equitable co-authorship and publishing into concrete actions in your institutions, in your networks, and to recognize and credit research locally as well. I think the future of education, research, and innovation really depends on partnerships that are built on trust, on respect, and equity. And I think together we can transform how that knowledge is co-created and shared so it reflects the richness of global perspectives. I would like to thank INASP, the International Network for Advancing Science and Policy, and the Southern Voice for joining hands with UniPID to make this webinar an inspiring discussion happen. Network-to-network collaboration is a splendid way to share information and to enhance academic partnerships. On the behalf of the University of Eastern Finland, I would like to extend a special thanks to the University of Helsinki for hosting UniPID's coordination unit and for supporting the important work that the UniPID does. We also have immense gratitude to all of the staff at UniPID for all the work they do, including arranging this event. We also want to extend our thanks to all the UniPID member institutions for entrusting the coordination of UniPID to the University of Eastern Finland from 2026 onwards. We take this responsibility with great honor and commitment. And finally, to all you participants, thank you for your passion, for your engagement, and I hope we can keep this momentum alive and make equity not just a topic of discussion, but a reality in every project, in every collaboration we undertake, and in every publication that's written. The change will start with us, so I say let's lead it. And I would like to thank you all very much, and I wish you all a good evening or a good day wherever you may be. Thank you.